This video is going to show you how to design a shoe for Zellerfeld that actually gets through all the checks so you can design whatever 3D printed shoe you want that can actually be made. But before we get started, you need to ask, do you actually want to make a 3D printed shoe on this platform? There's a couple things that I didn't know whenever I first started designing it. First off, it is much more difficult than I thought. My only experience with Blender was making like a donut using tutorial videos, and it didn't even look good. So trying to design a whole shoe was definitely a step up. Second is, how much does it cost to actually get this printed? The current system for Zellerfeld is you design a shoe, you get it past all of their checks and everything, and then you have to order a prototype in order to actually launch it. That prototype costs $235 right now, which, in case you don't know, you can buy an entire 3D printer for that, possibly two, which is very expensive for a shoe. There's other options, like talking to people in the community to have them print the shoe for you, but if you actually want to sell it on Zellerfeld's platform, you have to pay $235, which I didn't know whenever I started with this whole process. Another thing that you have to do is sign their contract, which has not been publicly made available yet. My understanding is about 60% of the profit from any shoe sales goes to you, 40% goes to Zellerfeld. There's also limits on the cost that you can sell your shoes. You can't just go on here and start selling shoes for like $50 because the production cost is limited, to my understanding, is about $150 for slides and then about $200, $229 for like actual sneakers. So you can't just undercut everyone else and then just succeed by doing that path. If you're still interested in designing shoes for them though, then please watch this tutorial. Whenever I was developing my shoe, which I haven't launched yet, still waiting to hopefully get a prototype, I had no real good access to tutorials, just looking through YouTube, looking online, anything else. And it's only because of the community members inside of the Zellerfeld Discord that I even was able to learn as much as I did in order to make this shoe that you can see here. All files will be available on Discord, all tools used will be available on Discord, and the actual design document and template files will also be linked inside the description. Please let me know if you have any questions. So the first step is going to be going to the Zellerfeld design documents. This can be found on their website and then also on their Discord. If you go to zellerfeld.com and then you say, I want to actually like make something, such as submit design, it's going to tell you to join the Discord. So once you're actually inside of the Discord, which is right here, you can go through the process of getting access to their design documents and everything else. That's just going to be over here inside the design guide. And you're also going to get these template files. So you go to Google Drive where the template files are stored. You're able to then download those and then use that as kind of a base for your file. For this tutorial, we're going to be using the Barefoot design files. You can use any of the other files as well, but for this one specifically, we're going to use the Barefoot ones just because that's what I have the most experience with. So I already have it downloaded, but you're just going to have to go over here, push the three dots, and then press download. And then once that's downloaded, you're going to also want to have Blender installed. I'm using Blender 4.4.3. It's the latest version as of when I'm recording this. If you get to version 5 and this is still the best tutorial, then hopefully it's still similar. But Blender's not too different between different releases, so it should be fine. So download that, open it up and install it, and then once you have Blender installed, you're just going to open up Blender, and then you're going to go to open for the file. Before you click on that though, you're going to have to go to your file explorer, so Finder in my case because I'm using Mac. All this will work on Windows and Macintosh as well as Linux. The keyboard shortcuts might just be a little bit different. And then you're going to open up that downloaded file that you got from the Zellerfeld Google Drive. In my case, I renamed it, but you don't have to. And then I just double click on my case to unzip it, open that up, and you're going to see a number of different files here. I'm going to then go into that file by going to File, Open, and then just gotta find that. So it's going to be under this folder for me, different folder for you most likely, just in downloads. Then open up that .blend file. So it should say Zellerfeld _barefoot _template _files.blend. Open that up and you're going to see several different files here. Using the middle mouse button is the best way to navigate in Blender. So middle mouse button, just holding it lets you rotate and then Shift and the middle mouse button is going to let you actually pan around. You should be able to see some of my keys here. Just what I'm pressing. So whenever I'm pressing the middle mouse button, it should show right here. And that should be a little bit helpful for you. There's going to be a couple of different files here that you're going to want to have to go through. So I'm going to kind of go through one by one, tell you what all this stuff is. You have the barefoot ankle height. This is basically saying your shoe has to either go around where those spots on your ankle are, or they need to have a cutout, kind of like normal shoes generally do. So that's just a design constraint that they have. The barefoot last high poly. I can just go through like this, so you see exactly what it is. This is essentially a scan of somebody's foot. I believe it's US men's size 10 is approximately what it's based off of, but you're going to be using that as an approximation for the foot, so later on you're going to cut out a hole in the shoe that fits that. You also have a low poly version of this. This can be helpful for modeling. I personally haven't been using it much, but it's something that can be useful to you. This is going to be the collar instep. So this is basically saying that you can't have the opening of the shoe going down all the way to that. It has to be limited to be behind that line, which isn't a big concern. This is basically the angle at which the shoe will be printed. So depending on your design, I'm going to do a very basic one for this tutorial, but depending on your design, that could be an issue. Or if you wanted to print it out yourself, you kind of just know the orientation. This is the shoe height. So the shoe has to be below this height level. And this is going to be the texture map. That's right here on the bottom. I haven't personally used that much, so I wouldn't comment on it too much. You're also going to have the barefoot sole thickness region. Your shoe has to be past this. So it has to be thicker than this barefoot thickness region, or else it will not go past the checks. So these are everything that you have. To hide anything, you just click on it and then press H. So I'm going to hide the stuff we don't need. We're not going to need the low poly. We don't need the high poly right now. The ankle height is going to be useful to us. This is going to be useful to us. We need that. Get rid of that. And then that's where we're going to leave. So the first big thing that you're going to do once you're inside of Blender, you have all these files opened. If you want to, you can hide the files like I did. You don't have to. It just makes it a little bit easier when we're going through this design process. First, you're going to select the barefoot reference thickness, which is basically saying the shoe has to be thicker than this. It has to be thicker than that. So you're going to basically have to make the shoe around that or just larger than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that. In my case, it's Command C, then Command V. On Windows, Control V, Control C, Control V. So Control or Command C, and then Control or Command V. And that's just duplicating it. I'm going to rename this by double clicking it and then just typing in right-shoe. And that's what we're going to be doing all of our modifications on. So make sure that this is the one selected. And then I'm going to go ahead and make it just a little bit bigger. So what I've generally been doing is taking the scale modifier here, and for Y, which is going to be side to side, I've been doing 1.1. Just making it a little bit thicker. For the Z, I've been doing 1.2. And then for the X, I've been doing 1.1. So as you can see, this is now a little bit bigger than the reference. If I just hide this, then this is the reference thickness, and then this is the resized version of it. So we're going to want to move this around a little bit to make sure that the reference thickness is fully encased inside of it. What I've been doing is moving this back about 10. So -10 on the right shoe, making sure the right shoe is selected. You just type in -10. And then on the Z, you can just also do -10. And that should be good enough right there in order to get you started. The next step is going to be cutting off up to this line. So you can't have a shoe that's taller than this line, so this part of it is just not very useful to us currently. There's a lot of ways to add different objects into the scene. I'm going to do this over here, where you just click on Add Cube, and then you drag out the size of the cube you want, and then drag out for the height you want. Lots of different ways to do it, but that's the easy way to do it. Then you can click over here in order to rotate your view. So Z is top of it. Negative Z would be right here. That'd be the bottom of it. And just zooming out with the mouse wheel is going to let you zoom out. If you want to move it around, you can use the move commands over here. So I do want to move it around. I want to move it up, so it's in line with that plane, which unfortunately it hides the planes whenever it's perfectly horizontal, just because this has infinitely small thickness, essentially. And I'll do a top view and just line everything up. So looking around this now, you can see that is covering it, but it's a little bit too high. So the next step is to get it very slightly off axis. Just very slightly. And then dragging this up until it is just barely below that plane. And you can zoom in to make sure that it is just barely below it. That's pretty good. I might adjust it up just a little bit. And there you go, it's just barely below it. So there's a lot of different ways to cut an object inside of Blender. The one that we're going to be using currently is called Boolean. And it's going to be a modifier that we're going to apply to the right shoe here. So I'm going to click on the right shoe, and then I'm going to go down to where it has the little wrench icon, and that's called modifiers. If you click on that, it's going to have a field here where you can add a modifier. So I click that, and then I type in Boolean, so B-O-O-L, and then just click on Boolean. And then you need to select an object to remove, because we're using the difference command here. So I'm going to click on the eyedropper and then click on the cube. I'm going to use the exact method for the solver. That should also work. And then you're going to have to apply it using the drop down arrow and then A. So drop down arrow or command A. And then if you hide this cube by pressing H, or you can also press over here, that is supposed to remove that off of it, which it did. You can see this is the last here, which is now visible through the shoe. I can hide that now, or we continue to modify it. But now we have a flat surface that is below the shoe height. So any shoe that we design will now be below the surface and should be allowed to pass the checks because of that. So I can now hide this plane. And the next step is going to be cutting out for these ankles. So as you can see, the shape here is very similar to a cylinder, I would say. So what we're going to try to do is use a cylinder, rotate it, and then cut out a cylinder-esque type shape in order to have room for your ankle to go in. So how do you do a cylinder? It's going to be very similar to how you do a cube, which is you press and hold on the Add Cube button here on the left, and there's an option for a cylinder. I want the cylinder to be as close to a circle as possible, just like a extended circle essentially. So I'm going to do Z to do a top-down view, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit and try to just take a circle that's going to take up this whole square or part of it. So I'm going to go over maybe 5 and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's going to be a good little sized one. Maybe bump it up to 6 and 6. And then you can drag up from there. So now I have a cube. Or a cylinder, sorry. So now you have a cylinder. And the next step you're going to do is you're going to take it and say edge split. It's just a process in order to make it smoother. And I'm going to press enter. The default settings are fine, so go ahead and apply that. And this is under the gear icon for the cylinder. And then do another modifier, and this is going to be subdivision surface. So that's going to just make it a little bit smoother. So without this applied, if I just push X here, you can see that it's quite blocky, I would say, very pixelated. And if you add a subdivision surface after doing that edge split, you can then get it significantly smoother. And the higher the level is, the smoother it's going to be. I'm going to go all the way up to 6, just to make it as smooth as possible. But you can do a little bit less if you want to. Just makes it a little bit easier in later steps. All right, so then do apply. And we have a very smooth cylinder. So we want to rotate it. So that's going to be the object properties right above the wrench. And then we're going to rotate it 90 degrees in the X. So now it's rotated. And we're going to have to scale this out just a little bit in order to make it wide enough for this. And also long enough to go through the shoe model we have. So you can scale it and then just grab the green handle and drag. And then we're going to want to move it. So I'm going to move it up using the Y plane here. And we're just going right through, lining it up like this. You can also do a top-down view and then use the green arrow in order to drag it. And there we go. We're starting to cover up the little ankles there, just make it a little bit easier. So now we're going to have to scale it up just a little bit. And what you can actually do is press the scale button here on the left. And then if you have it on the Y view, shift and middle click in order to move around like that. You can scale both of them by grabbing this green rectangle and then just dragging out like this. So normally on shoes, the top part is a little bit higher than the bottom part. So I'm going to try to replicate that as well. So I'm going to have it go all the way to the back of it, but not all the way to the front of it. Just like that. And one little trick to make this a little bit easier for you. If you go over here to the top right and click on viewport shading, it's going to show you everything kind of as a wire mesh, which just makes it easier to line up. So with this and then the side view, you change it to move and then you just drag it up until these ankle balls are just barely outside of it. Just like that. So you can see there is a gap there, and that's going to work good enough for us to be able to do this. That looks pretty good. So going back to normal view, just turning off the wire mesh and then going back to normal full solid, we can see that looks pretty all right. And the next step is going to be actually cutting that out. So if you remember from previously, all you have to do to cut it out is to go to your shoe, and then you have to go to modifiers, which is the blue wrench, and then do a Boolean. So B-O-O-L, select the object using the eyedropper, which is going to be the cylinder in this case, and then you can cut that out. Before I do that, I am going to save it. This is a very good spot to save, it's out of my opinion. And that's just going to make it easier if I ever want to go back and modify how deep this is or the shape of it or anything else. So I'm going to go up to File and then Save As. I'm going to say before cutting out ankle area. That's a fine name for it. Save As. And then you can do the apply. Now if you hide the cylinder, you can see that the ankle balls are hovering freely. They're no longer touching the shoe. And this is starting to look a lot more like a shoe. So you can also hide the ankle balls. That's fine. You can also hide the collar instep plane. That's fine. And now if we put in the last high poly, it's going to kind of show you what this shoe would look like if you're wearing it just normally. Your next step is going to be actually cutting out the shoe from the foot. So we're basically going to just be doing a selection of this and then removing the last high poly from that. So all you do is add another modifier, do Boolean, B-O-O-L, and then selecting the last high poly. and then exact is fine, apply. Hide that, and now you have a hole in the shape of that foot, essentially. You can also hide the barefoot sole thickness region. That's not needed right now. So that's looking great. The next step is going to be making this a little bit higher quality. I'm going to show you something that looks a little bit scary at first, but if we go to edit mode by selecting this object and then doing the drop down menu here, you can see the different vertices and faces of this shoe, which is detailed, but it could definitely be a lot more detailed. And how you get it more detailed is going to be going over to add modifier on the right shoe again, and then do remesh. There's a couple of different remesh options. The one that we are going to pick is going to be called smooth, and there's different sliders that you can do to adjust how smooth you want it to be. I'm going to run it at a 10, which works well on my computer. If it doesn't work well on your computer, you may have to run it a little bit lower, possibly, but the higher the better for this kind of operation. And that's just to make it easier for us to do the next step, which is going to be smoothing it out a little bit more. So that works. We're going to do a drop down and then apply. And then I'm going to make a new save that just says before smoothing. It's just really good to have multiple saves throughout the process in case something crashes or you want to go back and make some modifications. All right, so now that I have this, the next step is to go to a different tab here, which is called sculpting. Under sculpting, you're going to want to go all the way over to smooth, and then just zoom out until you see your shoe. Might have to zoom in, zoom out a little bit just to figure out exactly where it is. The default settings of 50 and 0.7 are fine for this tool, but you are going to have to change inside of this butterfly type menu the tiling. You're going to want to have it tiled along the y-axis. So now that you have that done, I normally start with the top view, so I'm pushing Z here. And you can zoom in, zoom out, however you want. And then you're just going to take your mouse, use the left mouse button, and you're just going to go all the way along the edge here. And the goal is to have it smoothed out, because that's one of the design requirements. You don't want to have a really sharp edge here where it would dig into your ankle or anything like that. So I'm going to just basically trace that out. And you can see immediately how that's getting a lot smoother just by going through and just dragging right there on top of it with those default settings. Normally I go through about 1 or 2 times, just really making sure to cut that down and make that as smooth as possible. Still a little bit sharp there over here on the back of it, so I'm going to go over that another time. Just make sure you get everything as smooth as possible. Absolutely go through 1 or 2 more times, just making sure everything's nice and smooth. Over here on this front lip, this could definitely be a little bit smoother. You can still see that's a little bit jagged. Just going through, smoothing it out. And this is kind of where the process becomes a little bit more art, a little bit less just going through a procedure. And you can make a lot of modifications here as well, which I will show you a little bit later on in this video, but for now, we're just going through and we're going to make a very, very basic shoe, just to go through the process. Once that's smooth enough for you, I think that's just about there for me. I might go ahead and just cut this down just a little bit by smoothing it out, so it's nice and smooth. It's looking pretty good. We're going to call that okay for now, and we're going to go back to the layout menu. So clicking layout is going to have the shoe. It's all nice and smooth now, which is very nice for you to look at. And we're going to then go ahead and basically cut out the collar. So this section right here, where I'm kind of running my fingers along, is called the collar of the shoe. And it's important for the way that the Zellerfeld people are printing their shoes, because they're 3D printing all of this, to have that as a separate surface. So it's not actually a solid object, it's a surface, which basically means that it's open on one side and it's not a closed shape. And I'm going to show you that in just a second. So what you're going to do is click Y again, and then you're going to go over to the edit mode. Inside of edit mode, you can see that now the faces and the vertices is just much tighter. If you zoom in, you can still see the individual areas, but it's just a lot tighter than it was previously. What we're wanting to do is to select this region, I'm kind of circling with my mouse, in order to have that as a surface. So the best way to do that I found is to go over here to the drop down menu next to where we had the wireframe earlier, click on the drop down and then enable X-ray. That's going to just let us any selections that we make to go all the way through the object, which is very helpful in order to enable us to basically modify the shoe. You're then going to long press on the select box here in the top left and change it to select circle. By default, the radius is going to be 25. We're going to want to increase that quite a bit, so maybe 200 or so. You can see right there that's getting close. A little bit more, maybe 400, 450. And it just depends on the size of the shoe. So I'm all the way up to about 500 now, and that's going to work good enough for our purposes. Then all you have to do is lower that over the edge of where you want the lip to be, and then you're just going to left click. And now you have that surface selected. And if I were to rotate, look around, I can see that's selected on both sides, and that's looking good. So the next step, now that you have this selected, I'm going to drag out these windows, just make it a little bit more visible, is you're going to try to duplicate the selected sections. That's done by pressing Shift plus D. So D as in duplicate, and then just shifting. Shift D, that's now duplicated. And if I were to move my mouse, that's going to move that around. But we don't want that, so we're just going to press Escape. And then you're going to press the letter P on your keyboard. And then you're going to press Selection. So you're separating what you have selected and what's on the screen by though it's selected. And if you did everything correctly, you should now see another object here in your tree over on the right. And if we go back to object mode by clicking this button in the top left, you can see that's exactly what you're seeing. There is another object. I'm going to turn off X-ray mode by just going up to the top right here and clicking X-ray. And there is that open surface that we were talking about earlier. So that's great. That's just layered on top of this existing shape. The next step we're going to do, I'm going to do another save called before decimate, is going to be decimating. So basically, the tools that we're using to actually 3D print the shoe can't handle file sizes that are larger than about 50 megabytes. Right now, if I were to export this shoe, it would be right around, I want to say, 150 megabytes. So that's a little bit too large. I'm going to decimate the shoe by selecting right shoe here, not right shoe.001, just the normal right shoe. Go to the wrench again, and then type in decimate. What I've had good luck with is just a decimation of 0.1. Press enter, and then you have to apply that as normally. And that's been pretty successful for me instead of just having a file size that I can actually do stuff with. Because otherwise, the current file size isn't really useful to me. And you can kind of tell that it's decimated because there's this gray area now where the collar is kind of overlapping it. And that's just basically saying that the faces and the vertices and everything, they don't line up perfectly anymore. They kind of lined up perfectly beforehand, which is fine for our purposes. It's very, very close. And now that shoe is basically done. but obviously you need 2 shoes, so we're going to fix that here in a second as well. The only step left is you're going to want to go here and then have this tool installed called the 3D Print Toolbox. You can find that online. So if you just look up Blender 3D Print Toolbox, it's going to be in the Blender extension. All you do is just click Get Add-on, and then you actually physically drag it and drop it into Blender. You may have to enable internet extensions, but after that, then you're done with it. And that's just going to show up here in this little sidebar, and you push check all while having the right shoe selected. That's going to give you some details about your model here, basically saying if there's any edges that are messed up or anything else. So we have a couple edges that are messed up. If we go to cleanup and then say make manifold, that's basically just closing up all those edges that are messed up. You can see over here it says modified, 6 vertices, 36 edges, all that. So we're going to check it again by pushing check all a second time, and this time there shouldn't be any non-manifold edges, so it would be good to 3D print if we needed to go ahead and do that. So it's saying that there still is non-manifold edges. I'm going to try modifying again. And another good check for this is if you actually take it and export it, then it's possible to modify the file online. So I'm going to do that real briefly, where I take the selected file and then go to File, Export, and then STL. And then I'm going to just do right-shoe. Export that. Make sure you have it on include selection only, otherwise it'll include everything. And if we go over to Bamboo Studio, which you can just download on the Bamboo Lab website, it's going to tell me whether or not this file could be printed. I'm going to delete this previous one that I had and then export that. So it's saying that it does still have some non-manifold edges, which in that case you're going to have to use this website, which is called formware.co. You can absolutely use this in order to modify your STLs in order to properly have them manifold, which is very important in just making sure that they can print, making sure that everything can be processed. This is a free tool. If you're using Windows, then I believe that the Bamboo Studio has this tool built in where you can basically upload the file and then use that in order to make it a manifold file. And this is only when the Blender tool doesn't work. But it does take a second to actually go through and upload everything. So I'm going to get this fixed, and then after that I'm going to move on to the next step, which is going to be duplicating the shoe. Because like I said before, they don't like it if you just upload the one shoe. You have to upload both the right and the left shoe, or else it doesn't work really. So if you want to go ahead and submit a shoe design through the auto checker on the Zellerfeld Discord, you basically have to go to Zellerfeld community on the Discord. Link will be in the description. Go to submit model, and then submit a model. I'm going to put my brand name as Boaz's Shoes. My full name is Boaz. And then product name is going to be YouTube Shoe Demo. And that can be whatever you want for that. And then submit. That's going to have a shoe here that I can then have as a ticket -2 for me, and allows me to basically submit whatever I need file-wise in order for them to take it through all the different auto checks. So there is a file before me inside a queue, which basically means I just have to wait a little bit before they can actually go ahead. Now there's 0 files in front of me. Generally this is a pretty fast process. The biggest holdup would be your internet speed connection. Like I said, I'm in a hotel, so the upload speed is not the best. But on my home Wi-Fi, it's not really much of an issue. So there's talking about the different issues, 12 naked edges, 1 non-planar hole, and then just going through and repairing everything, and then it will spit out that file for me to download, and then I can import that back into Blender and be able to go from there. So I download the proper shoe file. That's downloading. And then inside of Blender, all you have to do is go to File, and then Import and STL. Then I'm going to find that by just modified. Right shoe underscore fixed. Might have to refresh this. Right shoe underscore fixed. And there we go. We got the shoe here. If we go through our checker again, that should be all good to go. Yep, no non-manifold edges. So I'm going to just go ahead and hide the right shoe, or use the right shoe fix for the rest of this. And the next step is going to be going through and actually duplicating all of this. So to duplicate all of this, all you're going to do is drag down to select everything, do Shift D to duplicate, and then you can just move it around. But if you click on Y, it's going to snap it to the Y axis here and just move it only inside the Y direction. Once you've done that, you can select everything again and then do Control and M. It's going to ask you what mirror axis you want. I'm going to do Y. And now you have all these objects mirrored. So now you have a left shoe and a right shoe. So to go through and export everything, it's going to be the next step. So I'm going to start with the left collar, go to File, and then Export STL. I'm going to put this all inside of this folder right here. So starting with the left collar, should be right. Yep. Then export STL. Next is going to be the left last. STL, so left last. The name doesn't really matter, you just need to know what you're exporting. STL is going to be left shoe. And then right last. And then right collar. And then finally, right shoe, the fixed version. Okay, all that's done. So now what you do is inside this Discord channel, you do / and then ticket upload. It's going to ask you what type of shoe you're making. So in my case, it's going to be a barefoot shoe. And it's going to ask you for all your files. So going to my file explorer again here. I'm going to go to the shoes here and start with the right shoe. So right shoe. And it's going to ask me for the right last and right collar. So just dragging that in. Then you have your left shoe, left last, and then left collar. After that, you just press enter, send all these to the Discord bot, and it's going to go through a process of checks in order to ensure that your shoe is properly passing all of the different design requirements, which you can see inside the Google Doc file that we mentioned previously, if you have any questions. And the people on the Discord have also been very helpful for me in just understanding all the different requirements. Sometimes the Discord bot can take a little while in order to process everything. Generally, it's been below 10 minutes for me, but sometimes it gets pretty close to that 10-minute limit. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know that. I will also be releasing the shoe files that I've been using as Blender files, like STLs and everything, on GitHub in order to allow you guys to have a good base level kind of shoe in order to then go through and modify. That's one thing that I really wish that I had, is it just took me a very long time to get to this point where I have something that can go through and pass the checks. And having that as a baseline that you can then go through and modify and add your own designs on, text, whatever you want to do with it, I think can be really beneficial for people. All right, it just passed. So everything is green, which is perfect. And that means that we can now submit the model to Studio. When you do that, that basically allows you to order prototypes of your shoe and eventually see how many shoes you've sold, all of that kind of thing, order samples for promoters, send them to YouTubers, to friends, whoever else, that kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and press submit model, and then you just type in confirm, and it should confirm it. So it's now processing the files and everything, and it will then allow me to access all of this inside of Zellerfeld Studio, which then allows me to order prototypes and all that. So I'll show you that now. So I go to Gmail, View in Studio, and there's one of my pending shoes. So that's the one that I just created in the previous one. And then this is what it shows currently. So it's supposed to have actual renders and everything in the future. Right now they're still working on it. There's supposed to be a very big studio drop coming out at the end of July, is what I've been told. So maybe 4 to 6 weeks, something like that, from when I post the video. And hopefully that's going to change a lot of things and make the system just a whole lot better. But that's how you design a shoe for Zellerfeld. That's very, very basic. If you want to make it more complicated, you can absolutely just go in and start messing with it a little bit more. What you can do is go sculpting, and then if you turn on Dino Topo, it basically just creates new material. So if I went and just drew on this, that was what's smooth, so that wasn't very helpful. With like the clay tool, for instance, you can just go ahead, add designs, do whatever you want on the shoe, which is super cool. But I haven't played around with all of that too much yet, so that would be a later on tutorial if you guys want to see me do it, or if you just want to mess with it yourself, absolutely feel free. But I hope this is helpful. So now that you've seen the tutorial, I'm going to say 2 or 3 more things about the company. First off, one other thing that I was not aware of whenever I started designing my shoes is you cannot currently use the custom 3D foot scanning technology to get the shoe perfectly sized to your foot on the prototyper. This is a feature that's supposed to be coming out in the new version of Studio, which is going to be coming out end of July, is my understanding. But currently you cannot do that, which is very disappointing to me as someone that wanted to have a shoe that fit just absolutely perfectly using 3D scanning and everything else. I will say that I had a call with Daniel Cockings on their team, and he was very receptive to all of my feedback. He was telling me that they're going to improve a lot of stuff with the new version of Studio. They're planning on adding colors down the line, adding more production inside of the United States, as well as other facilities around the world. And generally just, they have a very good direction for the company. Personally, I'm going to be very excited when all that stuff starts happening. Right now, though, I just don't feel super comfortable putting a ton of time into this process myself. As they continue to evolve it, I'm definitely going to be very excited. I would absolutely love to have a shoe that fits me just perfectly, that I can customize with different colors, possibly just doing whatever designs that I want to make it. But I can't justify $235 of my own money on a shoe as basic as the one I designed today. If I start making some cooler, more funky designs that you can't really do with just a generic slipper or whatever else you can get at Walmart or Adidas, then that's where I can start justifying it. But I wouldn't personally pay $235 for what I made. I will also say that even the CEO of the company has responded to my messages on LinkedIn, just reaching out, kind of telling me about some of the issues that I've had, telling him that he's doing cool stuff, but that I have some trouble with the actual design process. And that's really, really great to see. So shout out to Zellerfeld on LinkedIn and Instagram for just actually taking the time to respond to my messages. It is super cool that you're engaged with the community to that degree. All in all, I'm very excited to see 3D printing footwear continue to evolve. There's a lot of other companies that are also doing cool stuff in the space, but I think Zellerfeld definitely has something special with all the different technologies, their slicers, their infill, the community that they built up around it. And there's just a lot of people very excited to make 3D printed shoes. $235 is just really, really high to actually get them made. But there's community members that can help you with your designs, and Even if you don't use their platform, I would definitely recommend joining the Zellerfeld Discord if you are at all interested inside designing 3D printed shoes. And you can get connected. There's people that can 3D print shoes for you for well under $100 just in the community. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. If you need any other tutorials specifically for designing shoes, I am not by any means an expert, but I'd be happy to help you out in the comments if I can, and then possibly make some more other short tutorials that are a little bit less in depth for any questions like that. Thank you.